Alright team, hope this finds you well. I think we're going to go for the preview of the Wembley Stadium show on Saturday. Daniel Dubois attempting to make the maiden defence of his IBF Heavyweight Championship against Anthony Joshua as part of that all-encompassing and never-ending Riyadh season. I'm not sure if this is an advert for next season's Riyadh season or whether this season's Riyadh season is currently finishing. It's not very interesting to me, but it's certainly held out with the boxing. Anyway, on to the matter at hand, which is of course the preview of the event. I was hoping to do a series of videos breaking it down over the course of the week, but so far my first offering on the Wembley Stadium show this week, which I think I uploaded on Tuesday, has amassed a whole 2 views. So rather than putting out content which probably nobody's actually interested in, I'll do it all in one go, so you could ignore it that way. Anyway, on with the show. We'll start off with Sheeraz making what many people are thinking will be light work of Tyler Denny. I've been reading YouTube comments all throughout the week, and it's generally seems to be that Sheeraz is going to ping his head off with a jab and finish him off in about 4 to 5 rounds. I don't think it's going to be that straightforward. Tyler Denny is nothing else but a roughhouse, and that's not being too charitable. He's a lot better than that. He's canny, he sits about you, and he doesn't let you off the hook for a second. I think he only has 1 KO to his name, which is something of a bit of a worry if you're going in with somebody like Sheeraz. But he has come up against all styles, shapes and sizes, and as I say, he always gets himself in and about things. I believe his last 3 opponents have suffered cut eyes because of Tyler Denny's style. One of his defeats against Reece Cartwright was finished also because of a cut, or a cut was one of the leading factors before the stoppage. And he's also he sticks to you like glue, as Felix Cash will attend to, and as will Real Wilson Bent. The first one of those fights, I think, should definitely have been a victory for Tyler Denny rather than a technical draw, which was given at the time. He does have one of those styles which seems to have a lot of technical decisions, mainly because, like I said, he's quite active with his head, clever with his head. But as I say, many people are of the opinion that Sheeraz is going to get this one done and dusted pretty quick. I'm not sure if it will be the case. I do think he will win, but what I'm interested to see is if Tyler Denny can get through those first 3 rounds relatively unscathed and fight the Tyler Denny style and gets the head work going, how will Sheeraz react to this? He's never been involved in anything of the sort before, so it'll be interesting to see how he deals with adversity, if he has to deal with adversity. But ultimately, I do think that at some point Sheeraz will get through, whether it will be a late stoppage or a points win. But I, for one, I'm personally hoping that Tyler Denny gives a good account of himself and can come back again. He does seem like a quality guy as well as a good fighter. So that's that fight. Then we're going to move on to, I almost said Liam Smith. We're going to move on to Josh Kelly versus excuse me, Ishmael Davis. A real body blow for the card was that Liam Smith pulled out, but then it did seem a little bit too good to be true. And if you saw the pre-fight face-off between Smith and Kelly, Liam Smith was a little bit more uninterested than he usually is. I've got to say, I did watch that face-off after the fight was called off, I must admit, so it's easy for me to say, being a Johnny after-timer. As I said on my video on Tuesday, that Liam Smith and Josh Kelly was probably the toughest fight to call and the most intriguing fight to predict, but of course that's all now by the by. And now Josh has got a completely different foe to face in Ishmael Davis. Davis has fought as high as super middle, and this is going to be, of course, Josh Kelly's debut at middle, so that's going to be interesting to see how that one pans out in that regard. Davis, totally different style and different boxing mindset to Liam Smith, and Kelly, who was a self-admitted deep thinker and overthinker, I think is more the case rather than deep thinker. That's the sort of thing that could drive him to distraction. And I think if you're a deep thinker, the one trainer you don't want in your corner is Adam Booth, a man who puts his own style and swing on things. Most of the time doesn't actually make a lot of sense, but that's my opinion. And you'd imagine that with Ishmael Davis being a late replacement, a totally different style switch, being an undefeated fighter, and being a tricky one at that Josh Kelly would. I'm quite surprised that he took the fight, to be honest. Not that he's afraid or anything of those along those lines. More that it was a late change, and as I said, a textbook overthinker. It's the sort of thing that, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, but he's gone ahead and done it, and the fight is on, interestingly so. And if you saw the pre-fight press conference between the two, I thought Josh came off pretty well, handled things very well. Ishmael, as the saying goes, you give someone enough rope, they'll go and hang themselves, and Ishmael almost did that verbally. He even resorted down, it went way down the depths by pulling out the old, "You're not from where I'm from." That's almost a 10-8 loss in a press conference, in my view, but there you go, that's by the by. But predictions, Ishmael Davis's size advantage does make things a little bit more tricky, but I do think, even though Davis was training for a fight which was going to be taking place in the middle of October, I do think the late notice will come down to bite him. And I think at the end, I think that Josh Kelly will put on a safety first-ish type performance. It'll be win this time, look good next time, as the old timers used to say in the 50s and the 60s. And I think that's what we're going to have a case of here. Interestingly, I don't know if those of you who read boxing news, if you do, you would have seen today that Graham Houston, who's doing the preview for the show in Boxing News, actually picked Ishmael Davis for the upset. So interesting to see what happens there. But I'm going to go for, as I say, Josh Kelly on points, say 116, 112-ish. And I don't think either fight, if anyone's going to get off the canvas, I think it will be Kelly. But as I say, I think he'll get the victory. So that's 2 fights down. And then that will bring us, to Joshua Buatsi and Willie Hutchinson, which has been a fight which has really captured the imaginations of sports fans, not just fight fans, sports fans around the UK, due to the abrasive nature of both when they seem to be in the same area as each other. I've got to say, out of all the fights on the card, this is the one that this is the one I'm least interested in. Not that it's a bad fight or anything along those lines, but I just like those other fights a little bit better. Buatsi, I think Buatsi will do it in this occasion. I've seen a lot of people going for Hutchinson, based off a couple of, or really the Craig Richards victory last time out. But I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing a Hutchinson win for me personally. I think that was something of a misnomer performance. I think he's had a little bit too. He's been around longer than he's been fighting for. If that makes any sense. For the amount of time he's been a pro, I think he could have had a few more fights, and also at least one more meaningful fight. His record has been a little bit lacking of names, and also his career's been somewhat stop-start. I believe he turned pro with that short-lived Richard Schaefer, David Hay axis, Ring Star Sports, and that didn't really go anywhere. I think he had 2 or 3 fights. Actually, I think if you remember, Ring Star Sports actually billed Willie Hutchinson as Scotland's greatest ever amateur boxer, which is a slap in the face if you're anything to do with the family of Dick McTaggart, who won Olympic gold medalist, I think, at Melbourne. 56 off the top of my head. So yeah, that's incredible to say someone who barely fought as a senior as an amateur is Scotland's greatest amateur. But anyway, that's by the by. Buatsi, of course, Olympic bronze medalist. For me, he's got this one, and I've been impressed more than I haven't been impressed by Buatsi. He has that cold, calculated demeanour, and as Eddie Hearn has said in interviews in the past, that he's all about himself. Joshua Buatsi, he doesn't care. He doesn't give an inch in regards to like training time or purse or a date on a fight. If what you say is what you're doing, and what you're giving is what you're giving, then you've got to live up to it. Which Eddie Hearn obviously isn't a big fan of. He wants a little bit of give and take, but Buatsi doesn't do that. And as soon as the chance was gone for Buatsi to leave, he took it. And time will tell whether it was a good move or not. But at the moment, he's more than likely got the biggest purse of his career, the biggest stage of his career, and should he win, and I think he will, it'll be onwards and upwards, and I'd imagine he's probably going to hope and wait for the light heavyweight championships to be fragmented if they were to do so following Beterbiev and Bivol next month. But as for an actual prediction, I'm going to go for Joshua Buatsi, 9th round TKO. There we go. And that brings us on to the co-main. I think it's going to be the co-main, who knows. Co-main in terms of billing, and that's Anthony Kakachi in what would have been his IBF super featherweight defence against Josh Warrington. Of course, that's no longer going to happen thanks to the IBF waiting until the last minute. We were led to believe that the fighters were told on a week ago today, and it wasn't actually announced to the fans until Monday. Always good to keep the fans in the loop, especially those who are paying that extortionate ticket price for a co-main, which was going to be a world title fight, and then 5 days before the show, the governing body involved suddenly say no. After all this time, where we'd been believed it would be a world title fight. Josh Warrington was on TalkSport last week, and they were talking about it being a title fight, and there was not even an inkling, not even a hint of it not being a title fight at the time. Good stuff, IBF. Great stuff, boxing. And I also think that could also have a knock-on effect to Warrington. If you saw, there was a pre-fight interview, Josh Warrington and Eddie Hearn on Tuesday, I think it was, maybe Wednesday, which they were saying about how downcast they were with the IBF removing the championship from their fight. And Eddie has justifications or reasons that he thinks that Josh Warrington should have had the IBF championship shot were quite incredible. But anyway, it's not to be. But I do think, as I say, that'll be an upshot on Josh Warrington's performance in the fight, and I think you're going to see that. I do think also the weight difference is going to be a big change for Josh. Plus the fact he does not sound good at all, does he? In my view, it seems as if the last 2 years of his career have really made a difference on him. Neurologically, he does not sound clear or concise when he speaks, and this was a guy who a few years ago really was one of the best speakers in the game, and not to be now. And I think it's only going to get worse. Kakachi is, if nothing else, he's longer, he's faster, and I think on the night, I think it may be painful, and it may be something of a sad end to someone who's served British boxing so well. But I think Josh Warrington is likely going to get stopped inside 6. Sad for me to say. I hope he doesn't. I really hope he pulls it off. But then again, the victory will be somewhat hollow, because he'll have nothing to celebrate at the end of it. But I think it's going to be for naught anyway. Anthony Kakachi TKO 6 is the LVD Sport prediction for that one. And then that brings us on to the big one itself, the main event. Daniel Dubois somehow has got his hands on the IBF Championship, and he's going to be defending it for the very first time, hopefully successfully in his case against Anthony Joshua. That's my cat in the background wanting to go out. Wonderful. This week, as you can usually imagine with Team Dubois, there's always something somewhat crazy going on, and in the last few days it's all come flying out. Hand injury, rumours of a cold, rumours of a fallout with Don Charles over money, over a rift with the direction of the training with Kieran Farrell, who is a co-trainer who's come on board recently. It's all been going on. On the one hand, you've got to say this can't be right. This is madness going on in fight week, the biggest fight of the man's career, Stan Dubois' son's career, and yet this is all happening. But then, if you spend any time studying the goings on in the Daniel Dubois camp over the years, you will also understand that you cannot rule any of this out as being factual. That is complete madcap at the best of times. So I'm not sure if Don Charles has a cold, whether it wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of hold up over money. And especially another thing I wanted to say was the revisionist history regarding Don Charles. A couple of years ago, people were almost laughing at the fact that Derek Chisora was considering going back to him, saying that he doesn't have any wins in any big fights, and then 2 fights with Daniel Dubois, and suddenly he's in the running for Trainer of the Year. And neither of those performances, I thought, were particularly edifying for Daniel. The Hrgovic one, of course, was the biggest win of his career, but it wasn't one of the most spectacular performances, but he got the job done. I would say he got the title around his waist, but he didn't at the time. He did afterwards. Email champ. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just not ideal. But as for Daniel, let's look at some of the interesting numbers. 29 knockouts in his 24 fights. He's got 90 rounds as a professional. He has a 95%, just over 95% KO rate. and it also works out just under 4 rounds is his average fight time, so that's interesting. Compare that with Anthony Joshua, whose camp has been somewhat serene. Ben Davison-Lee Wiley combination has been absolutely ideal. It's worked out a treat for him. After the Derek James experiment went wrong, those couple of fights he had there, but now I think he's found the right man for him. It's working out perfectly for him. And again, there's been some revisionist history regarding Joshua recently, but the amount of people I've seen picking Daniel Dubois, Adam Smith says Daniel Dubois is a favourite. For me, I cannot see that whatsoever. Like I say, he has a higher knockout ratio. Anthony Joshua has an 89.29% KO ratio. He's had 31 fights, Anthony Joshua. 31 knockdowns he scored in his 31 fights. 162 rounds total. And as I said, 29 knockdowns in 24 fights for Daniel Dubois. So he has a better knockdown ratio and a better knockout ratio than Anthony Joshua. But I think we would agree that Anthony Joshua's CV in terms of names and victories over those names is a little bit better than Daniel Dubois. But onto the fight itself. We've covered all the rigmarole was around it. Now, what's going to happen when the bell goes? For me, it's pretty clear, pretty concise. I do think that Anthony Joshua is going to get it done inside 5. I don't think that we're going to hear the bell for the 5th round. I think it's going to be wild and woolly. There's an expression in here very often. But I do think that Anthony Joshua is going to have the lion's share of the advantage of the fight. I think Dubois might have to get off the canvas more than once. But at the end of the day, it will be Anthony Joshua with the IBF Heavyweight Championship over his head, and Eddie Hearn will be going crazy telling us all that he's a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world, which he kind of is, but not exactly. Anyway, that's about it. That's my elongated preview for Wembley. Fingers crossed you listened to it this far. If you have, thank you very much. I've had no script this time out. I've just gone straight out up top of the dome. No edits at all. I've got some numbers regarding the knockout and KO ratios and all that I read out a second ago, but that is it. That's on a strip of paper about the size of a postage stamp. So, I hope you enjoy the show. Let's watch the weigh-in tomorrow, and I'll do a post-fight event. As you can hear, my cat is going absolutely crazy. I'm not letting her out this time of the morning. And that's all for me right now. That's the LVD Sport preview for the Wembley Riyadh season card. Thank you very much for listening. And as always, keep your gloves up and your chin down. Until next time, goodbye.